There now follows an election broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party.
Prosperity. That's the main theme of the Conservatives in this election campaign. Of course we're better off. Practically every country in the world is better off than it was a few years ago. But we haven't been given these things. We've of them by running up a big hire purchase debt. Yes, there are plenty of things in the shops if you've got the money to pay for them. We bought this basket of shopping today in London. Just a basket of ordinary groceries. Bread, milk, butter, meat. And this was what it cost us. This is the shopping list. And sixpence halfpenny. But now, 1 year later, they cost £2, 4 and 5 pence. I'm going to speak to one of the men who knows most about food prices in this country, Lord Sainsbury, and see what he has to say about it. Lord Sainsbury, from your own experience,
Well, I think, for example, what we can improve marketing. Take vegetables. There can be set up more producer cooperatives. And by such means, we can lessen the gap between what the grower gets and what the housewife pays. And then in a manufacturing, reveal their costs, to see how those costs will build up. And I believe if that was done, it would act as a very effective brake on what I would describe as socially irresponsible price rises.
so if there was a sudden jump in prices, the Price Commission would come in and investigate the reasons.
Exactly.
Prices are of all.
We know what land prices can do to rents, rates, mortgages. Recently, a council had to pay for every person it rehoused from some slums £1,000 per person for land alone. Ever since the Tories repealed Labour will buy land needed for building at a fair price and not a profiteer's price. Now, let's take some examples. Do you pay rent to a private landlord? If you were decontrolled by the Rent Act, you might at any time get 4 weeks' notice to quit. If you're still controlled, then those who are buying their homes know the burden of high interest. If you're hoping to buy, you see as well house prices forced up by dear land That is why Labour will provide, in the future, mortgages at lower rates. Or between 1953 and 1963, the Tories cut in half the number of council homes built every year. We shall reverse this policy. Or is yours a home without a bath, hot water, separate toilet? 2 years ago, Labour stated its plan policy. But it's the same all the time at every point. As the election approached, the Tories began to talk of doing something about land, something to help the owner-occupier. They have had 13 years in which to act. We need new policies
on going up are, of course, the elderly, the pensioners. 2 million of them, 1 out of every 4, have to go to the National Assistance Board to get enough each week not to live on, but to buy the barest essentials for existence. Nearly 1 million more qualify for national assistance, but for reasons which seem good to them, don't choose to apply. That taxing the sick is just about the meanest way a government can raise money. And that's one reason why Labour will get rid of these charges once and for all and find the 20-odd million pounds to meet the cost. We've poverty enough in Britain today, especially amongst pensioners, to make the Tory boast of an affluent society sound to them like How do we aim to do away with this poverty in old age? We intend to bring in an incomes guarantee to replace the National Assistance Supplement. Under this system, every pensioner and those on sickness or unemployment benefit will get their supplement not by going to the board, but from the post office, as of right. The older pensioner, which can only mean that those under, say, 75 or 70 in the case of women, get something less. I often think of another group of forgotten fellow citizens. The unmarried woman, perhaps going out to work to support an aged mother, coming home tired out to look after her, never getting a holiday. She gets little fun. Some hope of security when she too is old. Or will she, if the Conservatives have their way, be forced to wait till she's 70 for Sir Alex's little donation?
But how much can the nation afford to spend? Proper to ask that question. I'm going to answer it this evening. But I want to say something first. The Conservatives talk a lot about the austerity and the rationing of those early post-war years under the Labour government. What they never call attention to is the austerity and rationing which still exist in affluent assistance. And as for rationing, well, what about the government's attitude to school building? This year, for example, the local authorities submitted school building programs worth £170 million. And every school in that program was absolutely essential fact, he forbade the councils to build 2/3 of the schools they desperately needed and which they could build if they hadn't been prevented from doing so. I call that rationing, even if another name is used today. And I'm not surprised that Mr. Hogg has suppressed the official report on the state of school buildings him over a year ago. But even without it, we know quite a lot. We know that half our primary schools were built in the Victorian age, that nearly half of them have no inside lavatories, that nearly half have no playing fields, that 2/3 have no proper science accommodation, and that 3/4 have virtually no library. Yes, it's a strange world we live in. Any company which wants to build for profit, what wants to build authorities each year are forbidden to do the essential school building, without which nearly half our children are now being denied a fair chance in life. And the government's attitude to the teacher shortage is just as puzzling. It was 20 years ago that 40 was fixed as the max. Despite all the government's boasts, this situation isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse if these people stay in office. So that by 1970, under a Tory government, nearly half our children in primary schools will be being taught in classes of over 40. Now, that seems to us for winning back more married teachers, to get to part-time work. We know the plan will cost money, but we believe we can't afford to postpone the education of our children. And so I come back to this question of cost. How much can the nation afford? Well, it depends on how much the nation is earning. Slowly, and every 3 years, production is being virtually halted by stop-go-stop. Our plans for raising the old age pensioners above the national assistance level, for abolishing prescription charges, for building more schools, for training more teachers, all these plans are based on one single assumption, that we can anybody tells me that this can't be done by the British people, I reply, that's what our neighbours in Europe have been doing for years. We're convinced, give Britain a chance, we can do it too.
That was an election broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party.